Hello and welcome again. This is the third day of Kislev, and we are learning the laws of the reading of the Torah. Just an introduction again to explain what we're talking about. In Jewish custom, Jewish law is that we read 2 times during the weekday and once on Shabbat the Torah. We take out the Torah in our synagogues and we read from the Torah. It's actually twice on Shabbat day in the morning and then Shabbat afternoon. And there's always a period within 3 days that we read the Torah, that the Torah is taken out and we read from it. So Shabbat we read, then Sunday we don't read from it, Monday we read from it, then Tuesday we don't read from it, Wednesday we don't read from it, then Thursday we read from it. So there's always a period of 3 days when we read from the Torah. And the reason is for that is because our rabbis teach us this was a decree that was already given right from the beginning when the Jewish people got the Torah. And we learn that from when the Jewish people left Egypt. It says that they were in the desert going for 3 days without water. Says that in Exodus after they left Egypt. And to be 3 days without water, you can't survive. And we know that Mayim, Ein Mayim Ela Torah, just like water keeps us alive physically, so does Torah keep us alive spiritually. And there's no Torah without water. There's no water without Torah, meaning we don't survive without Torah the same way we don't survive without water. And just like with water, you can't survive after 3 days. So too, with Torah, we cannot survive, we can't function without having Torah within 3 days. And that's why we at least have to take out the Torah once in 3 days. So that's really the introduction of what we're talking about, calling people up for the Torah. And during the week, 3 people get called up. We do the minimal amount, which is Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, three types of Jewish people that we have. And then on Shabbat, we call up 7 people. And obviously there's Kabbalistic reasons behind that. But the person that's called up during the week has to actually read out together with the person that's reading the Torah. Now, in the old days, it used to be that everyone knew how to read the Torah text very easily with all the tunes and the trope. We all knew how to read it properly. But today, in order to not embarrass us, and this has already been for quite a few generations, when there's a chazan, there's a cantor who goes up to read from the Torah for you. And he's there and he's prepared the tune and he's prepared the words and he's not going to make any mistakes. And we didn't want to embarrass our people. So, many people don't know how to read properly. So at least when we call people up, they just make the blessing. And then the chazan, the shliach tzibur, the person that speaks for the congregation, who prepares, he does the reading itself. And that's how it's done today in shuls, in terms of reading of the Torah scroll. Now, another thing that's done is that even though you make the blessing, really you should be reading the Torah as well, but we don't because we're not capable of. So what we do is at least read together with the person that's reading the Torah. The chazan is reading the Torah. The person that gets called up should at least read the words with him. And he needs to make a blessing on the area that's going to be read. He can't make a blessing on something which is not going to be read. It's like making a blessing on food, which you're not going to eat. So too, with the Torah, you have to make a blessing on the area that you're going to be reading. And that's number 18 of where we're holding at right now, of Jewish laws. We're reading from Kitzur, Sulchan Aruch. It's a short version of the entire Jewish law in terms of what we need to know, how to be Jewish. And we will be covering many topics. Right now, we're covering the topic of reading of the Torah. And this is our first initiative. I'm on the 3rd day of doing this. And I think it's very important for people that if you're driving, walking, at least you can listen to something meaningful, which will direct us in the laws of Judaism. Very short. It should be around 20 minutes a day. and we'll eventually, over a course of 1 year, we'll be able to finish the entire Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the short version of the Shulchan Aruch of Jewish law, and have a broader knowledge of the laws in general. So we're talking about the person that's reading from the Torah, and somebody gets called up to say the blessing before and after the Torah. And you have to say the blessing on the place of where we're going to be reading. That's why when you get called up, they show you the place. You take your talit, you kiss it, and then you make the blessing, meaning you focus your blessing on the area that's going to be read. And this is what number 18 here in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch section 23 says. Im her'u leha'oleh hamakom she'ikra. They show the person that calls up the place that he needs to read, and he makes the blessing. Uberach. V'achar kach nizkeru she'en ze makom. Then he realizes, oh no, that's not the right place. They showed me the wrong place, and I made the blessing on the wrong place. Ele shebamakom acher tzrichim likrot. You need to be reading from another place. Ben shekvar hitchilu likrot, ben shedayin lo hitchilu. Whether they started reading or not, if the place that you need to actually read from is shown in front of you, just he showed you a different place, but it's in front of you, the place where he needs to read from, it's in the same area, even if it's on another page, the Torah scrolls written in scrolls of pages like this, it's 1, 2, it's columns, and even if he's on another column, but if it's shown in the same area, you don't need to make another blessing. The person that gets called up, his mindset was only on the place which he's going to bless on, the area, the whole area where he's going to be blessing is the whole page, what's in front of him. So it doesn't matter if it wasn't specifically that area that he was shown to. If the place that he needs to read from is not shown to him, and it's in a different place completely, and it's not shown at all, you have to roll the Torah in order to show you the place, or if the place is shown in front of him, but it's prior to the area that he showed him. So he showed him a space where to read from. It was the wrong space, and really the right place is a column before. You need to close and start again and make the blessing on the Torah again of Asher Bachar Banu, thanking Hashem for choosing us and giving us this Torah. But don't say the first part, which is Baruch Hu's second. You just say the Bachar Banu part. And first you say Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuto L'Olam Va'ed, because you made Al HaBaracha Rishona on the first blessing, Shebarach Lebatala, because you said it for no reason. And whenever we say God's name for no reason, we say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto L'Olam Va'ed, blessed is in his name, it should be a glory and honor forever and ever. If that's what we say when we say God's name by mistake. If he only says the first 3 parts of the blessing, which is Baruch Atah Hashem, and then he realizes, oh no, I started from the wrong place. Yesayem Lamdeni Chukecha, you should say Lamdeni Chukecha, which is a verse, meaning cancel the blessing that you said by saying Lamdeni Chukecha, which makes a complete verse. And then you could start again. If the place that he needs to read from is above the place that they showed him, but close, 3 verses away from where he showed him, it's all in the section of the day that you're reading. In such a case, don't bless a second time. Let's move on to section 19. For each person that gets called up, they need to read 3 verses. If you read less than 3 verses for each person that comes up, then you've not really read a portion for that person. That was Takanat Ezra. That was one of the decrees that Ezra HaSofer, the great scribe of the Jewish people, made, was that you need at least 3 people per person. And when a person gets called up, you need to read 3 verses for each person. On Monday and on Thursday, this rule applies that everyone needs to read 3 psukim per person. V'chen b'Shabbat b'mincha, similarly on Shabbat in the afternoon, when we also take out the Torah, tzrichim likrot lekulam l'chol hapachot 10 psukim. All together, we need to read 10 verses minimum when we take out the Torah. All together, between the 3 people that get called up, the Kohen, Levi, and Israel, we need all together between them 10 verses. And the reason for that is because 10 is a number of completion. 10 was the amount of times that God said for the world to be created. 10 is the 10 commandments. They represent something whole and complete. And we need at least 10 when we read the Torah every time we take it out. V'yesh likrot lahashlishi 4 psukim. We should read, at least for the 3rd person that gets called up, 4 verses. There's some that say 4 verses is for the 1st person, then the 2nd person is 3, then the 3rd person is 3, right? We said 10 and split that between 3 people that get called up. So the 1st person that gets called up gets 3, 2nd person that gets called up gets 3, and the 3rd person that gets called up gets 4. And that's kind of strange. Why do you choose the 4 for the last person? If we need to read 10 altogether, maybe do 4 first, then 3, and then 3. This halakha is how everyone holds today, and that's because we hold ma'alim b'kodesh. We go up in our levels of spirituality. So we start with a lower number, and then we do a higher number as we go along. But however, if you only read 9 verses, 3 each, 3 for each person, that's good enough, and you are good for the reading. And on Purim, on Purim, we read the story of Amalek, and that story is only 9 verses, and that's exactly how many people we call up. We call up 3 people, and we read 3 each, only 9 verses. We do not read 10, which is the norm. How is that okay? Mishum desalik inyana, because the whole topic is only 9 psukim, 9 verses. We don't feel the need to add another verse. Okay, so let's continue to number 20. Hakoreh b'Torah. The person that reads the Torah, lo yesayem b'makom shelo yishaer misham ad ha'parasha. We have a very interesting halakha here, interesting Jewish law, that, the Torah is written in columns, and it also has certain paragraphs. And when somebody gets called up, you can't just start and stop at any point that you feel like. 3 verses for each person. Start and stop wherever you feel like. You can only start in a place where we're going to see where it's good things are being spoken about, where there's mitzvot which are positive, where it's good things about people, and not sad stories or stories of the wicked in the Torah. We only call up somebody when it starts from good things and ends with good things. We only start, and we also only start from a place which allows me to have 3 verses prior to it and 3 verses to end of it, which means, so you have in the Torah, we have paragraphs. We can't end the reading 2 verses before the end of a paragraph, because then people are going to think, oh, the next person that gets called up, that next person only needs 2 verses to be read, and it's wrong. We allow only 3 verses to be read. So this is a extra precautionary measure that we have in Jewish law, that when it comes to reading the Torah, you can't finish just prior to the end of a paragraph. You have to either finish the paragraph or finish 3 verses at least before the paragraph ends. So the person that reads the Torah, hakoreh b'Torah, lo yesayem b'makom shelo yishaer misham ad ha'parasha. He should not end in a random place which is very close to the end of the paragraph. Dahainu ptucha ustuma, where a paragraph is. Gimel psukim lepachol lepachot. At least 3 verses. He has to give end 3 verses before the end of a paragraph. Ve'im kva berach. A paragraph in the Torah terms is called ptucha or stuma. Some paragraphs are completely open till the end, and some of them are stuma. They have just like a nice space between one paragraph and the next. But these are both considered like types of paragraphs, and you need 3 verses between each one. If you did make the blessing after you finished 3, סמוך, ואם כבר בירך לאחר שסיים בפחות מכמה פסוקים סמוך לפרשה, if you did finish 2 verses before the end of a paragraph, הקורא אחריו, the next person that gets called up, אינו צריך להתחיל מפסוק שלפניו, רק יתחיל ממקום שפסק הראשון. He doesn't have to go backwards now for the next person that they call up. You just continue from where you finished off. Ideally, you have to finish off 3 verses close to the paragraph. ויקרא עמו עוד ג' פסוקים בפרשה שנייה. You have to read with him another 3 verses from the next paragraph. ובפרשה שאין בה אלה שני פסוקים, on a paragraph that doesn't have only 2 verses in it, מותר להפסיק שם, then you can obviously end at that paragraph. אם יש פסקה באמצע פסוק, if there is a stop in the middle of a verse, so there's verses in the Torah, there's also some areas in the Torah where in the verse there's like a comma. Yeah, so if there's a comma in the middle of a verse, כגון בתחילת פרשת פנחס, מותר לסיים אפילו בפסוק הסמוך לה, like in the Torah portion of Pinchas, then you're allowed to finish off close to that verse. Okay, let's go to number 21. וכן לא יתחיל בפחות מג' פסוקים לאחר התחלת הפרשה. Just like we can't end close to a paragraph, we can't start too close 2 verses into a paragraph. We have to start from the beginning of a paragraph. ולכן זה שלפניו לא יסיים בפחות מג' פסוקים לאחר התחלת הפרשה. The person before him shouldn't end with less than 3 verses after the beginning of a paragraph, because we cannot start less than 3 verses into a paragraph as well. Number 22, יכוון להתחיל תמיד בדבר טוב לישראל ולסיים בדבר טוב לישראל. Whenever somebody gets called up, the conversation that needs to be in the Torah, the verse that's in the Torah, needs to be about something good, something positive, and it needs to end with something positive. בדבר טוב לישראל, something positive for the people, for the Jewish people. וכן לא יסיים במי שעשה מעשה רע. You shouldn't also finish off with a story or with something where someone does something bad, and then that's when the blessing ends. We have to start where it's good and finish where it's good. Such a powerful message in life as well. We want positivity. We call somebody up, we meet somebody, we start off the conversation positive and we end the conversation positive. If there's some kind of discipline or need to discuss something, we do that in the middle, but don't start the conversation with you shouldn't have or something like that. That's how blessings work. And in Judaism as well, when we call up somebody from the Torah, start positive, end positive. Number 23, which is the last one that we're going to be reading for today in our laws of reading of the Torah. Im קראו לאחד רק 2 פסוקים. What happens if, by mistake, they read for one person 2 verses? We said that you need at least 3 verses to make a Torah reading. Less than 3 verses, as if you didn't really read the Torah. So for each person that gets called up, you need to have more than 2 psukim. You need 3 verses. Now, what happens if, by mistake, they read 2 just for the person that got called up? Without realizing, they closed it and he said the last blessing. The person that got called up completed the second blessing. ובירך ברכה אחרונה. He does the second blessing. צריך לחזור ולקרות ויברך ברכה לפניה ולאחריה. He needs to go back and read and bless the blessing before and after and start again, because it's as if he didn't say anything. וכיוון שלאחר ברכה אחרונה הווה הסך הדעת, since after the last blessing there was a complete cancellation of thought, like you want to start all over again, כן צריך להתחיל גם ברכו ויקרא 2 פסוקים שקרא תחילה, and then therefore you have to restart everything. The first blessing, אשר בכה בנו, and ברכו את השם המבורך, literally start the first blessing on the Torah again. ועוד פסוק אחד עמו, and you should read obviously not 2 verses but 3. ואם קרא זאת בשלישי, if this happened for the third person that got called up, צריכים לקרות עוד 2 פסוקים, שיהיו כולם 4 פסוקים. We need to read another 2 verses besides for the 2 that was read, so that you have 4 altogether. ואם קרא זאת בכהן, if this happened by the Kohen, the first person that got called up, that they only read 2 verses for him. And now they called the second person already. They called the Levite. And they realized afterwards, the first person, the Kohen, they only read 1. They only read 2 verses. It wasn't good enough. As Adin Kenu, that's the law. If the Levi did not do the blessing, the first blessing, even if the Levite, the second person that got called up, didn't actually start the main blessing, you can go back to the Kohen. They should go back to the Kohen, reread from the Kohen again. The Levite waits and then gets called up the second time. But if the Levite started to read, they have to read with the Levite from where the Kohen stopped. And after the Levi is called, they call up 2 other Yisraelim, because the Kohen's blessing was not counted. Because that way you have 3 people that are called up. The Kohen's calling is not counted because he only read 2 verses. If they did so with a Levi, the Levi, the Kohen read 3. When they called up the Levi, they only read 2 for him. And now they called up the Israel, and he already made his blessing. And you have a problem because the Levi didn't even read 2. That's as if he didn't do anything. They should read for the Israel now 2 verses that they already read for the Levi. Add another one, so you have 3. And then call up another Israel. Call up another Israel in the house, letashloom gimel kurim, so that we can have 3 verses read for the last Israel that's called, because the Levi's calling wasn't counted. And if there is no Kohen in the synagogue, and they call up a Yisrael instead of the Kohen, and it happens that for the Yisrael, we only read 2 verses. And we realized, we made a mistake. We only called 2 verses for the first person. And now we already called up the second person. And the second person made the blessing. Then the second Yisrael needs to be reading the Torah from the beginning again, because the first person that read was not counted. He only read 2 verses. So you start all the way from the beginning. Vayisrael harishon, the original Yisrael, yamtin bikra acharav, the original Yisrael who only did 2 verses should wait, and he'll get called up for the second one. And after that, we'll call up another Yisrael, so that way we have 3 that are reading 3 verses. What we see here is the complication of Torah reading. This is a very strict and respected way of treating the Torah, where every word is calculated, every number that we say is calculated, and it's a beautiful thing. May you all have a good day. Thank you for listening.